There was a time when buying quality clothing was surprisingly straightforward. You found a trusted brand. You learned your size. You bought directly from the store. If the garment lasted, you returned. If it didn't, you moved on. The relationship was simple: product, customer, trust. Today, that relationship has become remarkably complicated, not because clothing has changed, because the marketplace has. For the first time in modern fashion history, it is entirely possible for two men to purchase what appears to be the exact same jacket from what appears to be the exact same brand at nearly the same price, and receive two completely different products, one authentic, one almost impossible to distinguish from authentic, not from a distance, not in photographs, sometimes not even in your hands. The counterfeit clothing industry has evolved dramatically. Gone are the days of obvious fakes, with crooked logos and cheap polyester masquerading as luxury wool. Today's counterfeit operations study fabrics, study construction, study packaging, study consumer psychology, and perhaps most unsettling of all, they study trust. Because trust is considerably easier to counterfeit than craftsmanship. The result is a new kind of clothing scam that has left even experienced menswear collectors questioning purchases they once would have accepted without hesitation. Today, we're exploring how this scam works, why it has become so convincing, the 10 brands most heavily affected, and, more importantly, how ordinary consumers can protect themselves before spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars on clothing that may never have been genuine in the first place. The new counterfeit doesn't look fake. The greatest strength of modern counterfeit clothing isn't quality, it's expectation. People no longer expect counterfeits to look terrible. Counterfeit manufacturers know this. Instead of producing obviously fake products, they produce products that appear good enough. Good enough for social media, good enough for photographs, good enough for resale platforms, good enough to survive the first inspection. This creates an entirely different challenge, because authenticity is no longer judged by obvious flaws. It requires careful observation, fabric density, stitch consistency, pattern alignment, hardware weight, construction methods, details invisible to most buyers, and that changes everything. Why experts are struggling fashion authentication has become a race. Luxury brands improve security. Counterfeit manufacturers improve imitation. Luxury brands change labels. Counterfeit manufacturers replicate new labels. Luxury brands introduce authentication cards. Counterfeit manufacturers copy those too. The result resembles cybersecurity more than fashion. Each improvement creates another response. Each response creates another improvement. Even experienced authenticators occasionally disagree. Not because they're careless, because some replicas have become extraordinarily sophisticated. The frightening reality is that counterfeit quality has improved faster than consumer education, and scammers know it. The rise of the super fake. Within the counterfeit industry, a new category has emerged. Collectors sometimes call them super fakes. These aren't cheap imitations, they're expensive imitations, manufactured with higher quality materials, better machinery, more precise construction. Some cost several $100s to produce, not because counterfeiters value craftsmanship, because better counterfeits create greater profits. If a fake jacket costs $300 to manufacture, but sells for $800 as authentic, the economics become obvious. The goal isn't fooling experts forever. The goal is fooling buyers long enough to complete the transaction. The second-hand revolution. Ironically, one of the greatest developments in sustainable fashion also created one of the biggest opportunities for scammers. The resale market exploded. Consumers embraced vintage, archive fashion, pre-owned luxury, limited releases, rare collaborations. This created enormous opportunities and enormous risks. Most resale platforms work honestly. Many invest heavily in authentication, but the sheer volume of clothing now changing hands has made perfect verification nearly impossible, especially for brands producing dozens of seasonal variations every year. Brand number 1, Moncler Luxury Outerwear, has become one of the largest counterfeit markets in fashion. Moncler jackets command premium prices. Their popularity makes them ideal targets. Counterfeit versions often imitate exterior nylon, logo patches, packaging, hang tags. The biggest differences frequently appear inside the construction, insulation, stitch spacing, hardware quality, areas buyers rarely examine. Brand number 2, Canada. Goose cold weather performance sells. Status sells. Canada Goose combines both, which unfortunately makes it highly attractive to counterfeit manufacturers. Modern replicas often include convincing holograms, QR codes, and interior labels. Yet the jacket itself frequently tells another story through fabric quality, weight, and insulation consistency. Brand number 3, Stone Island. Few brands attract dedicated collectors quite like Stone Island. Their removable compass badge has become one of fashion's most recognizable symbols, which also makes it one of the most copied. Counterfeit badges improve every year, but genuine Stone Island remains extraordinarily precise in fabric innovation and dye techniques that replicas struggle to reproduce consistently. Brand number 4, Arc'teryx Outdoor Clothing has entered luxury fashion. Arc'teryx now commands prices once reserved for tailoring. Scammers noticed immediately. Fake shells often appear convincing online. Only prolonged wear reveals inferior waterproof membranes, poor seam sealing, and reduced durability. Brand number 5, Ralph Lauren Purple. Label. The Purple label line represents American luxury. Its understated appearance creates a unique authentication problem. Because minimal branding means buyers rely almost entirely on construction quality, exactly where counterfeiters hope consumers won't look closely enough. Brand number 6, Brunello Cucinelli Soft Cashmere. Quiet luxury, minimal logos, exceptional craftsmanship. These characteristics define Brunello Cucinelli. They also create authentication challenges. Because the luxury exists in touch more than appearance, photographs rarely communicate touch. Scammers understand this perfectly. Brand number 7, Loro Piana. Perhaps no luxury brand relies more heavily on fabric quality than Loro Piana. Their textiles are extraordinary. Counterfeit versions often imitate the look remarkably well. The difference usually appears through movement, weight, softness, recovery, qualities impossible to fake completely. Brand number 8, Gucci remains among the world's most counterfeited brands. Its popularity guarantees demand. Modern replicas frequently reproduce packaging, receipts, and shopping bags alongside the clothing itself. Consumers mistakenly authenticate the experience rather than the garment. Brand number 9, Louis Vuitton. Few luxury names possess greater global recognition. That recognition attracts counterfeit operations on an enormous scale. While iconic monograms remain heavily copied, quieter LV ready-to-wear pieces increasingly attract sophisticated counterfeit production due to higher resale values. Brand number 10, Dior Menswear has become particularly vulnerable following renewed interest in luxury streetwear. Limited collections, exclusive releases, celebrity collaborations, high resale prices. These conditions create perfect opportunities for counterfeit distribution. Why consumers keep falling for it? The answer isn't ignorance, it's optimism. People want to believe they've found a great deal. The psychology is understandable. Luxury encourages aspiration. Discounts create urgency. Together they become extremely persuasive. Scammers don't sell products. They sell opportunity, an opportunity that feels too good to ignore. How to protect yourself? Slow down. That alone eliminates many scams. Research sellers. Request detailed photographs. Inspect construction. Compare measurements. Study stitching. Examine hardware. Understand typical retail pricing. Most importantly, question unusually attractive deals. Because genuine bargains exist, miracles usually don't. The bigger lesson. This conversation ultimately isn't about counterfeit clothing. It's about attention. Modern consumers often spend more time researching brand reputation than product quality. Counterfeiters exploit that imbalance. They understand people recognize logos faster than fabrics, names faster than construction, stories faster than reality. Learning to evaluate clothing independently becomes the greatest protection available. not only against counterfeit products, against poor purchasing decisions altogether. Final Thoughts fashion has entered a new era, an era where appearances alone are no longer reliable, where authenticity must be earned rather than assumed, where understanding materials, construction, and craftsmanship matters more than ever. The 10 brands we explored today represent only part of a much larger conversation. A conversation about trust, about value, about perception, and perhaps most importantly, about learning to see clothing for what it actually is. Not merely what the label asks us to believe it is, because the most convincing counterfeit has never been the fake jacket. It's the illusion that logos alone can tell us what's real. In the end, the most dangerous counterfeit is rarely the garment, it is the certainty. The certainty that we know what we're looking at, the certainty that a familiar logo guarantees authenticity, the certainty that a high price guarantees quality, the certainty that a convincing story must be true. Counterfeit clothing succeeds because it understands something deeply human. People do not buy with their eyes alone. They buy with expectation. Expectation changes perception. Expectation fills in details that are not actually there. Expectation convinces us that a jacket feels heavier because the label says it should, that a sweater feels softer because we've heard the name before, that a pair of shoes must be exceptional because someone we admire wears them. Expectation has always been one of fashion's most valuable materials. The counterfeit industry simply learned how to manufacture it. That realization can feel unsettling, not because it means everything is fake, because it reminds us how easily perception can be guided. The modern clothing market is filled with extraordinary products. It is also filled with extraordinary stories. Sometimes the product deserves the story. Sometimes the story exists to compensate for the product. Learning the difference is perhaps the most valuable skill any consumer can develop, because authenticity has never been something printed on a label. Authenticity exists in construction, in materials, in intention, in consistency, in the invisible decisions made long before a garment reaches a store. These things cannot be copied perfectly. They can be imitated, approximated, suggested. But genuine craftsmanship leaves traces that become more visible with time. A counterfeit often looks convincing on the first day. Real quality usually becomes more convincing on the 100th. That distinction matters, because clothing is one of the few purchases designed to accompany life itself. It moves with you, travels with you, changes alongside you. It experiences rain, sunlight, airports, conversations, celebrations, ordinary mornings, unexpected evenings, and gradually, without announcing it, it begins to collect history. No counterfeit can manufacture history. History has to be earned. This is why the best garments often become strangely personal, not because they are expensive, because they have remained. The jacket that survived every winter, the boots that crossed countless cities, the sweater that somehow became softer every year, the shirt that still fits after hundreds of washes. These objects stop being products. They become companions. The luxury industry understands this. The counterfeit industry understands it too. The difference is that one attempts to build relationships, the other attempts to imitate the appearance of relationships. And appearances, no matter how convincing, eventually encounter reality. Reality is patient. Reality notices things marketing ignores. Loose stitching, inferior fabric, weak hardware, poor construction, corners cut where nobody was expected to look. Time reveals all of these things. Time is perhaps the greatest authenticator ever invented. It has no bias, no marketing department, no influence of partnerships, no financial incentives. It simply observes. A garment either survives or it doesn't. This is why slowing down has become such an important act. Modern shopping encourages speed, limited releases, flash sales, exclusive drops, countdown timers, artificial urgency. Everything encourages immediate decisions. Counterfeiters benefit enormously from urgency, because urgency replaces observation, and observation is their greatest enemy. A careful buyer asks questions, examines details, compares construction, feels the fabric, questions inconsistencies. A hurried buyer rarely does. Perhaps the most valuable habit any man can develop is learning to pause before purchasing. to hold an object, to study it, to ask not whether it is desirable, but whether it deserves to exist in his wardrobe. That question changes everything, because it shifts attention away from status and back towards substance. Eventually, this way of thinking extends beyond counterfeit clothing. It begins influencing every purchase, every decision, every investment. The eye becomes more disciplined. The judgment becomes quieter, more independent, less influenced by noise, more interested in reality. This is the hidden benefit of understanding clothing. You stop seeing garments as symbols. You begin seeing them as objects. Objects made by human hands, objects with strengths, weaknesses, compromises, intentions. And once you begin evaluating clothing this way, something remarkable happens. The logos lose a little of their power. Not because brands stop mattering, because your own judgment starts mattering more. That shift is incredibly liberating. It allows you to appreciate genuine craftsmanship without worshipping it, to enjoy luxury without becoming dependent on it, to recognize quality whether it appears inside an expensive boutique or inside a modest workshop no one has heard of. The best-dressed people often possess this freedom, not because they know every luxury brand, because they know what good work looks like. And good work has a language of its own. It communicates through precision, consistency, patience, attention. None of these qualities can be printed onto a label. They have to be built into the garment itself. That is why true quality remains surprisingly difficult to counterfeit, not impossible, but difficult. Because copying appearance is relatively easy, copying intention is much harder. The new clothing scam will continue evolving. Counterfeit products will become increasingly sophisticated. Authentication methods will become increasingly complex. Technology will continue changing the marketplace. But one thing is unlikely to change. A person who learns to evaluate clothing honestly becomes extraordinarily difficult to deceive. Not because they know every authentication trick, because they understand what genuine quality feels like. And that understanding creates a kind of quiet confidence, the confidence that no logo can provide, the confidence that no counterfeit can imitate, the confidence that comes from seeing clearly. Perhaps that has always been the real purpose of learning about clothing. Not collecting labels, not memorizing luxury houses, not chasing exclusivity, simply learning to look carefully enough that stories no longer replace reality. Because in the end, authenticity is never found in the name stitched inside the collar. It is found in the integrity of the object itself. And the people who learn to recognize that integrity discover something far more valuable than any designer label could ever offer. They discover judgment. And judgment, unlike fashion, never goes out of style.